Hey guys, it's Monica at Academic Phoenix Plus, and welcome to another reaction and analysis video. I have seen this particular one several times. This is Kata's Villian. If you guys don't know who Kata is a band from League of Legends, and it's about 5 of the characters, and they've converted themselves into a K-pop band. I watched their first one and I fell in love with it. And I even have statues and a couple of other swags. I turned into a fan. And then they released these new videos that came out, and I just cannot believe the quality that comes out of League of Legends. So I really wanted to analyze Villian because it's got some really powerful imagery. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with Kata's, or KDA, Villian. And the main character is Evelyn. I'm going to go ahead and hit play. Okay, I'm going to pause. So this is interesting to me because as a 3D artist, creating buildings can be complicated, but they are buildings that you can actually download fairly quickly and you can kit bash them together. So what's interesting about this one is just like how monotone it is. So they're only using blues, dark blues and light blues, and they have this really thick fog. Cinematography is called like flat space, which means that you really don't see too many perspective angles. I mean, there's some here, but in general, this is almost like plane after plane after plane. So it's very flat. And the symbolism behind that is that it's supposed to be almost like claustrophobic. So it's interesting visuals, but we know there's depth just because of the fog. And then we get more perception here. We have some nice fog here. And at the top, you can see that I make a video on how to use Arnold fog in Maya. Ooh, there's some really fast cuts there. That's nice. Okay, so this is the key character. Notice she's right in the middle. Usually in cinematography, you put things in the rules of thirds. And if you're not aware of the rule of thirds, our attention has a tendency to attract ourselves to, in particular areas of an image. So usually it's in the thirds. And she's in the middle. And because of the movement of her, whatever those things are, her dress, I know those things that kind of have like a mind of their own. Her tail, is it 2 tails? I think they act like tails, but I know they're not. So it's a very contrast silhouette, so she does stand out. And because of the animation, we know exactly where we're supposed to focus. And the fact that she's in the middle states that she's probably the most powerful and most important subject in this shot. So I love this. This is the introduction to color. And it's orange yellow. So I just love the idea that this is so cold and so like repressed or suppressed, and then you have this super bright color that just pops into there, which reminds me of, I know this is so old school, but Citizen Kane has something very similar to it. This is just to tell you that you should look at her first and that should be second. And then for the first time, we finally get closer to her, but she's always silhouetted. We never see her face directly. Kind of gives her a little bit of mystery, but we recognize her because of her tails. I'm not sure what they are, but we never see her face truly, and that keeps her mysterious. This is again an introduction to color. I spoke about it in the breakdown to Raya's trailer. Oop, I got my sub captions on here. I'll turn that off. The fascinating part is that they're using like this pink to introduce again more color, the warmest color in this whole scene. They do some really beautiful rim lighting in this scene, but we don't fully see her. So that keeps her mysterious and kind of like intriguing. Okay, then we have this. The environment is relatively simple. The textures are relatively simple. They're really pushing it is with the lighting. So whoever directed this really understands the concept of motion, architecture, and it's a moving lighting. So it's almost trying to show passage of time. Lots of depth of field. We get introduced to water, which is probably the most organic thing here that we've seen so far. Everything has been like hard surface other than, the character. I love the reflections. I mean, water is complicated. And that was one of the things that I thought was really interesting about this video, is that I felt like this was someone's visual effects demo reel, because later on there is so much visual effects with smoke, with shatter, with cloth. I was just like, is this someone's visual effects reel? Because it's really good and well done. Oops. Let me rewind. Again, really interesting. She's in the middle, but she's also encased by the window. And notice also the rules of thirds. These lines are actually kind of almost perfect in rules of thirds, but she's again in the middle. You have lines of perspective now. So she, the vanishing point's over here where she's at. So again, all of the focus, even though this scene is, relatively busy, we know that the focus is here. But again, she's being silhouetted well. And then you have these emissive lights back here. And fog plays a big part in this scene. Camera's motions, Some nice lens flare. You can see the lens flare here. It's really strong depth of field. We're focusing right here, but it's just such a nice use of lens flares, depth of field. What they're using here is kind of like lenses. So in CG and in actual real cameras, you can manipulate the aspect ratio and it gives you a weird kind of like lens distortion. In this case, it's very artistic, but in some people use it to make the scene disturbing. It was introduced in which film was it? Vertigo. That's kind of like the idea is that's supposed to disorient you a little bit. So there she is again. So they used almost like a kaleidoscope, which you can get in like After Effects or some sort of software that you can create that look. But we recognize that this whole video is about her because this is obviously her claws and she's got one finger that's bejeweled. I don't know what else to call it, but she's got a lot of jewels on one of them. And notice the rim lightings. They have a very, they're really encouraging or pushing the silhouette of everything. So they increase the rim lightings on the side so we can still see what it is, but basically everything else is in shadow. Love the animation. There she is. Okay. So I really like this shot because we finally get to see her claws, but also notice the depth of field here. You'll see that it's focusing just along here. Everything else is really, really blurry. And then you have some particles that are floating around. Now this could be done in post or it can be in scene depending how expensive the company wanted to go. But usually it's cheaper to do it post. So this has, connotations there. So what I'm looking for as a texture artist and as a 3D artist is, oh, look at those beautiful reflections. Oh, look at those scratches on there. How interesting. Look at the fog and where they put the fog. Look how blurry the environment is. Notice how reflective her hand is to the object. These are the type of things that you start analyzing when you're watching these videos. So again, it's really fun to watch. Here it is. This is another great example of the surface itself is very reflective, as you can see by the reflections of her hand. But they added this like a scratch map on it, probably on the normal map or bump map, depending on what they're using. And it just works. It's a beautiful way of breaking away the reflection. But it also symbolizes her because she has all of these claws and I guess she just kind of cuts everything. So instead, it could have been really easy to just make this smooth, but they added this scratchiness to push not only the story, but also the visual content. There she is. We're finally starting to see a little bit of her. They use this. The only part that throws me off in this is this camera angle. It's kind of like almost like handheld zoom in, zoom out. So it's like voyeuristic. But I'm not sure why they did that. But I do like the background that she's in. It's all her claws. So again, even the environment around her is her. And I don't know too much about her backstory or who the character is in the game, but it's really powerful imagery to build an entire environment based on her claws, but also the landscape that she's in right now is really rough. So, almost destroyed. There they are, tails. I don't know what they are. I'm guessing tails. Now this part's interesting. I always thought that was an interesting detail in the animation. Her heels kind of wiggle. They're trying to show that she's walking in these gigantic heels on rough terrain, and that's what happens in real life is that whoops, I'm going to break an ankle. It's a beautiful silhouette here. This animation's actually well done. She'll start scratching it, but notice the walls. Notice where the depth of field is, the lens flare right here. You see her silhouette, really well done. They did such a great job. I love this video. You can see that this whole giant space is just about her. This is her domain. Sparks, look at those sparks. So we're going to start getting into dynamics soon, which I think is great. Oh, there we are. See, dynamics. I just love this because it just gets so crazy. But I know it looks like smoke, but it's in 3D, it's considered a fluid because it has similar movements as liquid and wind. So they kind of share similar things. So the fact that they have this heart, this is probably millions of particles. I'm going to guess they're using Houdini to create this because of the number of particles it has. But it's kind of smoky and very organic. And of course, it's the shape of a heart, which is interesting. And then you've got these random swirls. Like, it's just great. All of that is just fluids. And then they've rewinded it. Lens flares. It's always fun to see what type of lens flares they add to the camera to see what type of effect. And lighting wise, it's also very interesting because now they're introducing teal. So before it was purples, a little bit of orangey, maybe some pink. But now they're starting to introduce even more colors, which is increasing the dynamic of the music video. Probably one of the most detailed and more complicated scenes. And there it is. You see that camera motion? So let's rewind that scene again. But what they did was move the camera and then they used a Dolly Zoom. So the idea is that you are actually zooming while you're moving the camera, which gives you an unnerving but interesting effect. So it's a pretty cool effect. Whoop, just like that. It's a fun effect. Maybe I'll demonstrate that in a video tutorial sometime. And as I mentioned before, I feel like this is someone's dynamic visual effect demo reel, because we're going to start seeing some pretty stunning stuff. So here's some crushing chairs, and then we have a shatter effect here. So again, this is basically rewinded. So, but somebody took a chandelier and then shattered it, which is again very, very dynamic because it requires a lot of motion. You have big pieces, you have little pieces that break, and then the smaller ones have more energy, so they kind of fling out further. So it's pretty complicated. And you can see the effects. Beautiful. I have to admit that this particular shot is, I mean, like, her lips are well done. The animation, whoever did the animation for this is unbelievable. But you can see the glossy lips, and I always take a look at, it's kind of hard to see her teeth in this shot. But also notice how close we are. You can see that there's like a gradient of color from purple, pink over here to the right, blue to the left. Notice the particles and the depth of field, very strong. So we really focus on that. Okay, so this is an introduction to the car, and I thought this was interesting because in the previous video, when they first introduced Evelyn and, you know, all the KDA gals, it was like Lamborghinis or something, and now she's driving this muscle car, which I find kind of interesting. Now they're using some sort of shader that has two different colors depending on the angle. So when we're looking at it straight on, it's, you know, it has this purple color, but on the sides is blue, and that's like the Fresnel effect or Fresnel effect. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. It's an effect where depending on what angle the light is bouncing, you get to see a different color. This happens a lot in water and pools. It's pretty common, and the car is a great example of, whoa, that's a creepy shot. Her eyes are glowing there. You don't really see them too much, but when I pause it, you can see it. A car is a great example because when you look at a car directly, you don't really see your reflection very well or any reflection, but when you look at the side, you'll see a lot more reflections, and that's the frontal effect. It's important because almost everything has it, so you have to make sure that you understand it. All right, Ms. Diva's car. Interesting car here. Watch out. Okay, so now they're introducing this cloth. So they're using cloth, and my theory is that they have a piece of geometry here that's being dragged, and they're simulating the effect of it. And then they have this shader that has like snake skin on it, but what happens along here, I have a tutorial called an AI mix shader, so it's almost like they're animating the shader for one to show up and the other one to kind of vanish. It's a great effect. I'll see if I can make a tutorial about it. I can't promise, but it's something maybe similar. We'll see. But it's a cool effect. I love it. Whee, and the cloth, look at that. Again, dynamics real. I feel like I need to put a little ringtone. Ding! This is cloth. It's like demonstrating to somebody like, hey, not only can I do cloth, I can also do really advanced shading. What do you think? So again, it feels like someone's real. So first of all, I want to compliment the modeler because they literally modeled every single eyelash. Beautiful shading. So they have like sparkly makeup up here at the top too. And now we're starting to zoom in into her eye. And her eye is actually, her pupil usually is black, normal people, black, but hers is glowing gold. And these start moving around like snakes. So now we're starting to get introduced to more concepts of snakes. So the car was the introduction of it because of the scales. Now we're starting to see the shapes. And then we're starting to advance more into like the actual visuals of snakes. We'll talk a little bit more about it. But I wanted to also look at the veins. I know this character is very stylized, but they still added realistic elements like veins in her eyes because we actually have a lot of veins in our eyes. That's how we get blood into cornea and our iris and everything. But it's still pretty plain. There's not a lot of it, but it's still there. So I thought that was really a nice touch to make this still feel like she's a real person, not like a doll. In film language, when you zoom in into someone's eye, it usually symbolizes that we're about to go into their subconscious. So anytime you start zooming in into an eye, we're going to see the world in their eyes. So the fact that we're zooming in here and then suddenly turns purple and dark, For me, it's very symbolic. It means that we're going to see what she sees, and what she sees is like snakes. Lots of snakes.
Why did it have to be snakes?
Right, Indiana Jones? Okay. This is pretty amazing. Like just withering pieces of geometry with this texture of scales. We recognize it as snakes. And now one of the details I want you to guys observe when it comes to the animation, you'll notice that her lips actually stick. Whoever animated this was just so smart because they made it look like her lips were a little bit dry. So just kind of observe that in us when I show you guys. All right, beautiful. Can you see that? You see that? That's so interesting. All right, let's talk about snakes. They're purple, so clearly they represent her. We're still in this room of hers because of the emissive light here. But the symbolism of snakes, it's a mix of things. So usually, if you know about the Bible, snake usually represents the devil because of Adam and Eve. So it can represent sin and evil. And Evelyn, I know, has a really dark past. So the fact that she sees snakes everywhere could symbolize that she sees evil everywhere. Or it could be that she's also very evil. Now, Evelyn is supposed to be... She hangs out with like hero characters, and I know she fights and stuff like that. So again, I'm not really sure what her story is, but in general, she's like a good person, but the world is negative around her. Another thing about snakes, it's also hinted to Medusa. The myth of Medusa is that she was this beautiful woman and Poseidon attacked her. And so Athena punished her by transforming her into Medusa, which means that she's got hair snake. She was cursed. Anybody that looks at her turns into stone. So in a way, she can never get close to anybody. But at the same time, it could also be that Athena is giving her a gift of being protected because nobody can approach her, and therefore she will be safe. She will never be attacked by any man or any person ever again. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword there. People don't like her because she, kills you and turns you into stone. But then on the other side, she's actually safe, which is Athena's way of almost protecting her. Anyway, so what happens is that Perseus comes in, kills her, and then gives her head to Athena, and then Athena has it on her shield. So in a way, Athena's remembering her. But relating to Evelyn, it could represent sin, it could represent evil, and could also represent a way to keep herself safe. Again, it's a lot of snakes. So again, dynamically, it's just pouring snakes everywhere. So it's pretty intriguing. This is great. This is more of an introduction to that yellow. Now her eyes are burning orangey yellow. And it's very dramatic compared to her blue and purple background. This room we've seen before, but now you'll notice that it's got more snake symbolism. There's actually snakes in the water. The emissive light is now gone at the top. They've been replaced by snake lights. Again, we're seeing everything in her mind. Okay, now they're introducing more new colors. So her eyes were yellow. Now this is yellow-orange. And it's almost like fire. So the first time I saw this, I remember thinking, whoa, somebody's trapped in there. They're trying to get out and there's fire. And outside here is her space. And it feels like she's trapped. But then she starts to pull and you get this amazing looking, she's like ripping through the glass and it turns out to be more like a membrane. And this reminds me of Diablo 2, the trailer where the Lilith is coming out. It's kind of like the same effect. And I think this is done through cloth because it's just being stretched. Not 100% sure. I would love for you guys, if you guys think you know what it is or have an idea of what this effect is, just leave a comment below. I would love to hear it. But I think it's cloth. It's being stretched. And they're using like this translucent texture to give you that effect. And it's almost veiny around here. So this gives it more of like a skin texture, like almost like subsurface scatter. But it's great. So she's almost like tearing through it. So in fact, she was never trapped. She was actually almost like being reborn, like Lilith. And then they demonstrate to us that the fire that she was in is in fact her fire, that it doesn't hurt her. Like she's literally holding it. And now we're getting introduced to the fire shader. So again, ding, visual effects, demo reel here. We have water, we have fire, we have cloth, we have so much fluids. It's pretty, look at that, that's so cool. Water, fire, that's pretty amazing. Another powerful imagery, she's in control. She's taking up most of the scene. Fire doesn't bother her. We still get those hints of purples. Her eyes are burning just the same color. So she's in complete control over here, even though fire is usually scary. Okay, so then comes this one. This is like sprouting wings, but these are almost like roots. And I'm not really sure what the symbolism behind this is, but it is intriguing. The red, though, makes it feel very violent. So it's like these roots are growing out of her. They almost look like wings. Her eyes are burning. You can't see her. It's great. It's dark, but it's a great silhouette. I don't know who created this stuff, but the cinematographer, bravo, ma'am or gentleman, bravo. There you go. The animation, again, compliments to the animator. Okay, here comes cloth. They just laid some cloth on her and made her walk. All simulation. So this is an interesting effect as well. We're going to be seeing some fluids being moved around. And then it starts to, it starts to get smaller and smaller. And the purpose for that type of symbolism is that usually when something takes up a whole scene and then it gets smaller and smaller, it's supposed to represent loneliness, because the darkness is overwhelming and you just become smaller and smaller. So psychologically, it's supposed to represent like you're kind of fading away. It looks like a marble, but her world is almost collapsing. It's kind of sad, but cool, beautiful. Here she is walking. We get to introduce to her stockings that have a missive layer in the front, which I think is interesting. I think this scene is probably one of the ones that can be recreated fairly quickly. You have like rough terrain, you have spotlights with fog, and then they just get animated. So I think that's a pretty cool scene. I mentioned a couple of times, maybe I should recreate one. Let me know which one you guys think I should recreate. Should I try to recreate this one? Should I recreate the shader with the cloth? Should I try to anyway, there's a few. Maybe the room with the water, the pool. I don't know. Let me know in the comments below what you think. So now we're back at the beginning with the buildings. There's more reflections now, and then the city is turning their lights on. So it could represent that an idea is growing in her mind, or she's feeling that the city's waking up, or it could mean that she's waking up. It could mean a lot. More snakes. Again, they're starting to introduce us to imagery that we've already seen before, so it's just repeating. We recognize. So now they can cycle through these fairly quickly, but we recognize them. So it won't bother us because we've actually seen these before. All right, take a look at that. Shatter, beautiful. Fire, liquids, water. Who did this? Who is this genius? I want to know who you are. I want to shake your hand. Awesome stuff. Beautiful. There's, see, again, we're just flashing through these things fairly quickly, and we finally get to her end where we get to see, this is probably the most we've ever seen her. We still don't get to see her in full light. She's always been silhouetted, but for the first time, we actually get to see a little bit of her face. And then pop. There you go. Well, that was fun. I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was Kada Villian reaction / analysis of this beautiful concept video for Villian, starring Evelyn. I hope you enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I especially love, there's so much powerful imagery here. I just don't even know what to do with myself. I'll just stop. I'll pause it right here. Just to kind of, I feel like this embodies her the most because there's chaos around her. She's still silhouetted. And the render is just gorgeous. So, well, I think that's a good place to stop. I've been talking for a little bit, but let me know what you guys think by leaving a comment below. If you like these videos and if you'd like to see more, maybe I'll do another Kada, or I can do some other ones. Just go ahead and make a comment below, and I'd love to hear your opinion. This is something new that I'm trying. It's kind of fun. I do love to watch the videos. So hopefully you've liked it. Let me know by leaving a comment below. If you guys are interested in seeing more about my videos, video tutorials, or even free downloads, take a look at academicphoenixplus.com. There you can find all sorts of trainings if you are especially a Maya artist. So again, take a look at academicphoenixplus.com. It would be wonderful if you guys could like and share this video, and of course subscribe. Thank you again for watching. Keep creating, and I will see you next time.